Scaring their audiences is not the exclusive domain of horror games. Every so often, games that are not in the horror genre can surprise players with how unsettling they can be, and one of the most effective ways for them to do that is through music. And in this feature, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about, as we list 14 instances of games that weren't exactly horror, taking us aback with their scary music. So without further ado, let's get started. Lavender Town, Pokemon Red and Blue. For a series made primarily for kids, Pokemon has a surprising tendency to regularly show some pretty eerie stuff, and the eeriest of them all was Lavender Town as a whole. From the creepy Pokemon Tower to the vibe of the whole town, Lavender Town was not a very pleasant place to be in, and the music accompanying the location had a huge hand in that. The Living Forest, Mortal Kombat 2. With its pace and incessant drum beats, the theme for The Living Forest in Mortal Kombat 2 is much more upbeat, relatively, than some other tracks in this list, but still equally effective. Rather than the slow, palpable atmosphere of something like the aforementioned Lavender Town, The Living Forest invokes a much more immediate tone that sits perfectly with the atmosphere of the location and the kind of in-your-face style that Mortal Kombat games proudly display. BATTLESCAPE, XCOM UFO Defense. You wouldn't think that a strategy game would be interested in scaring its players, much less be capable of it, and yet XCOM UFO Defense did that surprisingly well quite a few times. Most of that was thanks to the BATTLESCAPE theme, which did an excellent job of making you uneasily sit at the edge of your seat and actually consider the odds you were up against. It might not be a horror game, but it feels like it's been lifted from a hardcore horror experience. The Final Hours, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask is probably the most unsettling game in the Zelda series, to the extent that it's fostered a proper horror community around itself over the years, and suitably enough, the game has many music tracks that represent its nature. And the one that does this better than most others is the climactic Final Hours, with its moody undertones and its ominous bell tolls. It captures the feeling of impending doom perfectly, and stands as a shining example of the series' musical prowess across all genres. Ripple Star Catacombs, Kirby 64. Nintendo games that are seemingly made for younger audiences but sneak in scary sections with suitably scary music is something of a trend. Kirby 64 2 is obviously also made for younger audiences, I mean, just look at it. But then comes along this level that can actually make you shiver. No, it's not in-your-face scary, but the combined effects of being in a catacomb and having this cacophonous music play in the background is pretty scary nonetheless. Arsenal's Guts, Metal Gear Solid 2. Metal Gear Solid 2 really sort of loses it close to the end in a very, very good way. It actually makes players and Raiden question what's real and what isn't. And as if the bizarre codec calls from the kernel aren't enough, the music track, Arsenal's Guts, comes along and really pushes you over the edge. Metal Gear fans are no strangers to eerie sequences that seemingly come out of nowhere, and this is definitely among the very, very best this series has ever delivered.
A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness.
Misty MENACE, Donkey Kong Country. Another Nintendo non-horror game with unequivocally creepy music. Act surprised. You might be playing as a gorilla wearing a tie named Donkey Kong, but the Misty MENACE theme does its best to make you forget that. It's the perfect blend of peaceful, mysterious, and unsettling, and if someone with no knowledge of the series heard this, they would be shocked to know what kind of game it comes from. of the Ancients, Rayman 2. It's not just Nintendo who throw truly unsettling pieces of music and sequences into games primarily made for kids. Ubisoft's Rayman 2 did this as well, and did it quite regularly, most notably with the Tomb of the Ancients. It's a location that's creepy enough as is, and going hand in hand with its creepy art and atmosphere is this suitably unsettling music track. Full of unnatural melodies and moody strings, Tomb of the Ancients is enough to give anyone nightmares. The Abyss of Fear, Batman Arkham Asylum. All Scarecrow sections in Batman Arkham Asylum are poster boys for surprisingly scary sequences in non-horror games, so it's no surprise that the music accompanying them is just as scary. These sections show Batman losing his grip on reality and succumbing to Scarecrow's greatest weapon, a weapon that Batman uses himself so effectively, fear. And the Abyss of Fear encapsulates that feeling perfectly. Gygus theme, Earthbound. Everything to do with Gygus, the character, the moments leading up to the final confrontation with him, the confrontation itself, everything is the epitome of the kind of horror that makes your skin crawl, and the theme accompanying him represents that perfectly. It's suitably otherworldly and chaotic in a very understated way. The fact that it conveys so much, so well, in spite of being from a game that's over 2 decades old, should tell you everything you need to know about it. Masked Man theme, Mother 3. Just as effectively unsettling as the Gygus theme in the first Earthbound is the haunting theme of the Masked Man in Mother 3. Constantly looping in the background during the battle, it captures the unearthly nature of the entire sequence perfectly, with its alien and once again chaotic rhythms to great effect. Song of the Siren, God of War. Kratos' encounter with the Siren in the first God of War is one that fans of the series remember fondly to this day. As if the creature by its very nature wasn't creepy enough, the music going along with the entire section is also enough to set your teeth on edge. With its haunting melodies and voice constantly playing in the background, it's the very definition of eerie. You Can't Escape, Eversion. At first glance, Eversion is a short platforming game with cute, colorful visuals, and then it hits you with this, a music track that lets you know, to great effect, that you found yourself in a situation that you didn't quite expect, and might not find entirely easy to escape. The uneven strings, the infrequent drum beats come together to create a truly creepy piece of music. Creatures, Jagged Alliance 2. Jagged Alliance 2 is a classic tactical RPG known for its biting humor delivered via character quips in a setting that covers mercenaries in a war-ravaged land. Almost none of what I said should sound like it would remotely be appropriate for this specific track, Creatures, that plays in this game. Just listen to it. At first, it sounds like a classic gothic horror movie, but the more you listen to it, the more ominous it becomes, eventually sounding as though it would be fit for a stalker sequence in Resident Evil. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.